Utilizing UDL to rethink curriculum and instruction of lesson plan design. Hi, my name is Randa Elbih. I teach a variety of curriculum and instruction courses in the teacher licensure and the graduate MAT and MA programs. In most of my courses, candidates learn methods of teaching and designing lesson plans. Designing lesson plans require two-dimensional thinking, through which candidates learn teaching methods and the theories that support them. Designing lesson plans also require a three-dimensional perspective, which requires thinking abstractly and applying concepts and theories to new situations and ideas. To design a lesson plan, candidates need to understand the parts that make up a lesson plan and think about how all the elements come together in a cohesive whole. I've provided here an example of a good lesson plan and an example of a bad lesson plan. Good lesson plans include attention getters, relevant summative assessment, higher order thinking questions, they have clear objectives, they rely on prior learning, and they are well organized. Bad lesson plans, they have simple assignments with no purpose, the assessment does not match the objective, they rely on lectures only, and there are no opportunities for students to respond to questions. I have consistently seen in all my methods courses many candidates create unthoughtful and unaligned lesson plans. Initially, in my undergraduate teacher licensure course on methods of teaching social studies, I thought about the problem from the student's end. From that perspective, I thought the learning barrier could be that candidates feel exhausted to utilize the two- and three-dimensional thinking in their lesson plan design. As a result, they create unthoughtful and unaligned lessons. But after understanding about UDL and taking the workshop, UDL inspired me to think about the problem from my end. So I asked myself, what am I doing or not resulting in candidates creating unaligned lesson plan designs? I thought more about the problem and realized I had begun my course design by focusing on the content knowledge instead of starting my course design by focusing on the students' learning. So I needed to shift my thinking from content-focused to student-centered. I rethought building my curriculum design based on my students' prior knowledge and strengths to guide my teaching of lesson plan design. This aligns with UDL Checkpoint 7.2. I needed to pre-assess candidates to identify what they already know about lesson planning and start my curriculum from that stage instead of creating it from what I thought was the start point. Starting it from the student's prior knowledge allows me to estimate the effort, the resources, and the difficulty of teaching them how to design lesson plans. UDL Checkpoint 6.1. Secondly, since I assigned the lesson plan as the final project, the time for candidates to think about the lesson plans thoroughly might be limited. When I reteach the course in the future, I would break down the lesson plan design into manageable pieces and teach these parts throughout the semester, while also providing candidates with enough time to think about each component and keep modifying and adjusting the lesson plan elements as the semester progresses. UDL Checkpoint 3.3. To give a specific example, the social studies content area standards are the starting point of any lesson plan. I would teach it during the second week of the course, and then give candidates 2 weeks to select a state standard based on the grade level they wish to teach. I believe 2 weeks would be enough time for them to look over the standards and select one about which they would like to build their lesson plan. Thirdly, assigning the lesson plan design as a final project might be a barrier to learning. Initially, it made sense because I teach the foundations of social studies education that candidates need to design their lessons. Throughout the semester, I focused on utilizing disciplinary lenses of social studies such as historical thinking to teach subject areas such as history to K-12 students. By the end of the semester, I went over lesson plan design and explained how the parts of the lesson plan make up the whole lesson plan. However, I realized that the thinking of this requires knowledge of content areas and disciplinary lenses, and a relational reflection of the course objectives, CAPE accreditation requirements, teacher preparation standards, and other projects in the course. To complete this assignment thoroughly required that candidates learn how to think in 2-dimension and 3-dimension simultaneously. It requires that they think of the parts and the whole together. For instance, part of a social studies lesson plan design is to develop a compelling question to guide the lesson. An inquiry question must focus on a standard of a content area and at the same time be open-ended, abstract, timeless, and interdisciplinary. Developing an excellent compelling question is one of the national standards for the preparation of social studies teachers. But candidates find it challenging to develop a compelling question because it requires abstract thinking, 3D thinking that they might not have learned in high school or prior education. Therefore, I would scaffold the instruction of designing a lesson plan early in the semester and provide candidates with multiple opportunities to practice designing a compelling question. After thoroughly selecting the social studies standard and understanding its relation to the other benchmarks and lesson objectives. This solution would allow candidates to think of the compelling question and other parts of a lesson plan design independently, which is the 2-dimensional thinking. As they practice building other elements, they can see how their parts relate to the whole lesson plan, which is the 3-dimensional thinking. UDL checkpoint 3.3. Finally, creating student-centered lesson plans is difficult for candidates who have not had classroom teaching experience. To resolve this issue, I will model for pre-service teachers how to utilize UDL in their teaching, which requires that I model for them to set goals for the lessons and select the appropriate assessment, UDL checkpoint 6.1, develop appropriate strategies to scaffold the lesson and transfer it to the learners, UDL checkpoint 3.3, apply UDL by thinking of their lesson in connection to the learners in their classrooms, UDL checkpoint 7.2, develop self-reflection on their thinking and self-assessment to constantly revise their lessons and build new knowledge or information, which is UDL checkpoint 9.3. Also, to produce thoughtful lesson plans, I will encourage and support peer mentoring and peer modeling through Think Aloud of the process of lesson plan design. This method would allow candidates to learn from each other modes of thinking of lesson plan design. UDL checkpoint 6.2. Also, I will encourage candidates to reflect on their thinking of the process of lesson plan design. I hope that my suggested solutions would assist candidates in designing thoughtful and aligned K-12 lesson plans. I appreciate joining the UDL Institute and discussing pedagogic strategies with my colleagues from across the university. UDL has provided me with a new lens to rethink my K-12 methods of teaching courses and ways to integrate UDL into designing my assignments. Also, I will continue to use UDL and the resources provided through the UDL Institute to teach teacher candidates how to incorporate UDL in their teaching. Thank you.